Chapter 39. Choose Your Fighter. Summary. The group finishes picking their weapons. Fear the Mei. The weapons never seem to end. Mina swears the 6 of them will have long since turned to dust before Mr. Zyuntux had his fill. Not that she's complaining too much. The weapons were all really cool. Like, seriously, she got to learn how to use a fucking sword! She wasn't very good with it, the weight throwing her off step, but it was a goddamn sword! And a cool space sword at that. She also got to try out throwing knives. It was one of those things that she thought would be a really cool skill to have, but she didn't have the time to learn on Earth. Like, there wasn't any real reason to learn, except that it would be cool and an unexpected skill to have. It wouldn't help her in her hero work, and she already had dance to fill her free time, so she never got the chance to learn. But now she could. It wouldn't be her main weapon, but Mr. Zyuntux had said that she could choose 1 or 2. So yeah, that was awesome. But she was still on the lookout for a different weapon, one she just clicked with. Now it seemed they were moving on to staff weapons. Quarterstaffs and the like were good and all, but they seemed a little plain for her taste. If she was going to invest a lot of her time into mastering a weapon, it was going to be a badass weapon. No offense to anyone who wanted to fight with a stick. It was good she added that mental no offense because Ochako was looking at the bow staff with interest. Mina, though, was suddenly drawn away from her bubbly friend and towards Mr. Zyuntux, who held the most badass weapon she had ever seen. At first, it looked like any other boring old staff, but he had clicked a button and it sprung to life. On each end, a curved piece of metal shot out, electricity quickly thrumming to life over its surface. It was a double-sided scythe staff. Gimme. Unfortunately for the Pinkette, she had to wait to try out the Darth Maul scythe staff. First, they all had to learn how to use a regular bow staff. Mina gave it her all, she really did, but she couldn't quite get the flow right. Ochako, on the other hand, was really excelling. Seems like another member of her little family had found their weapon. After failing with the bow staff, Mina did not have high hopes for the scythe staff thing. Still, she took its badassness in her hands and swung. It soared through the air as she moved, perfectly balancing itself out through each turn and dip. This was the one. It was like dancing, getting into the flow of things and following her rhythm. She'd found the weapon she clicked with, and it was a super badass scythe staff! She couldn't wait to show everyone back at UA. Well, she'd have to learn how to actually use it properly, but she had plenty of time. Katsuki was getting frustrated. He still hadn't decided on what kind of weapon he should choose for support. He didn't really want to have to spend time learning some shitty weapon. He'd much prefer to spend the time honing his quirk, but this wasn't Earth. He didn't have the option. So he'd choose something and would be the fucking best with it. But so far, nothing seemed quite right. The main point of using support weapons was to broaden their versatility, but still give them a backup if their quirks were out of commission. He had close combat and mobility down with his quirk, so he'd prefer something long-ranged for versatility's sake, and brass knuckles, or whatever they have in space, in case he couldn't use his quirk. Even better if the weapon's quiet. His quirk is plenty powerful, but it's not stealthy. Normally that wouldn't be a problem for him, but being in space, it's anything but normal. But nothing had been quite right yet. Swords, warhammers, axes, nothing was right. Now they were looking at bows. Surprisingly, this option had some potential. Long-ranged, silent, could whack someone upside the head with it. It definitely wasn't his normal style. It wasn't flashy or overly violent. He didn't need anything too violent anyway. Not after what he'd almost done. But it might just work. He'd have to get the feel for it first, though. Well, we certainly know who won't be choosing this one, Kaminari said, looking at Katsuki. Katsuki's eyes narrowed at the blonde. What's that supposed to mean, Sparky? He shot back. Kaminari put his hands up placatingly. Sorry. No offense, but I can't see you going for a bow. I'm surprised you didn't latch onto that rocket-powered hammer. That seems more your style. Destruction and power and all that. You know what? Fuck it! Katsuki picked up the bow, quickly took a few test shots, no bullseyes but all hitting the scrap wood they were using as a target, and turned to Mr. Zyuntak. This is the one I'm gonna pick. The purple alien looked a little taken aback, but smiled nonetheless. If that's the one you want to use by the end, I say go for it. When Katsuki turned back to the group, the others looked a little stunned. Seems like Kaminari wasn't the only one who thought it didn't suit him. Well, he'd show them. He was absolutely going to master archery and shove it in all of their faces. Live your life in spite. Izuku was getting nervous. This was just like getting a job all over again. They were on the last weapon of the day. Literally, the sun was setting, and Izuku still hadn't decided on what he wanted to use. Everyone else had picked something, yet he was still undecided. Ochako had gone for the bow staff, Kachan a neat collapsible bow, Denki a whip, and Mina a double-bladed scythe. Mei apparently had already decided what she wanted to use before they'd even started, so when they got to the gun portion of their day, Mei was quick to litter the target with bullets. Izuku didn't know why. Maybe it was the manic look in her eyes, even though that was practically her default. Or the fact that most of her shots were dead center. But the idea of Mei running around with a gun had him shuddering in fear. Nezu help anyone that crossed her. But that brought him back to his own problem. He still hadn't found anything right. Nothing quite scratched the itch he was looking for. Something that would keep him safe, even with his quirk still locked away. Something that he could fight back with. Some of the options would be okay, but it looked like Izuku would be the only one without something that really clicked. Well, he had one last chance. Izuku tried not to get his hopes up as Mr. Zyuntak led them towards the last bunch of weapons. They didn't seem like much at first glance, just boring shields. But they each were a little different, with cool tech integrated into their designs. Retractable serrated edges for some, sparking electric rings for others. Izuku's mind whirred at all the different combinations he could fit into a single shield. Would it be possible to have a shield that had a blade edge setting as well as an electrified one? Could you do that and make it collapsible? How strong were they? How light were they? Could he make one that always comes back, like with Captain America's shield from those pre-Quirk movies? Shields were beautiful in their simplicity, and much easier to modify than something like a sword. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the weapon he would click with, the one that could be changed most to fit his needs. It was the last one as well, and that seemed to be becoming a theme recently. Last one to get a job, last one to find a weapon, last one to get their quirk back. Izuku pushed back the less enthusiastic thoughts because he should be excited about this. He is excited. A shield could really work. It's great defense, but with some cool alien tech options, it could be great offense as well. Maybe even ranged if he could figure out how to make it returnable. He could probably ask Mei about that. In all reality, Mei's not gonna let Denki sit this one out. Of them had their work cut out for them with modifying the weapons to Mei's standard. But overall, things were looking up. His friends knew about One for All, as well as his past quirklessness, and they had been so supportive. It was more than Izuku could have ever hoped for. Sure, he tried to be optimistic, that if his secrets ever did come out, they wouldn't hate him, But some days the doubt was too much. He couldn't deal with losing his friends, especially now that these 5 had become like family to him. But he didn't have to worry anymore. They'd accepted him for who he is, quirklessness and all.